All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. I'm happy to have Liz Graham with me today. We're fellow Wayfarians from back in the day, and she's doing a lot of interesting stuff these days with Ada IQ. So let me just pass it over to Liz to give you guys an intro.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mike. Really appreciate you inviting me to join you in the podcast. My name is Liz Graham, CEO of Ada IQ, and I am fascinated by customer experience. I was running customer facing teams at Wayfair when Mike and I worked together there. And at Ada IQ, we're focused on the intersection of intelligent product design and market insights. So this is really an opportunity for us to help businesses who are in the physical product development area transform their ability to create uh, products customers love using AI enabled deep learning models.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great, Liz. I love it. Maybe we can just start for the audience with a little bit of like history and how product development has maybe evolved over the last few decades.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's fascinating to me. Our company was founded by a group of academics out of Northeastern, and their research has really been in new product development. And there's this really interesting um, pattern of step function changes in product development tech about every 20 years. So if you think of like the first era, that was people drafting, master craftsmen doing drawings and sketches that then got created into physical models, usually by hand. And then in the 80s, CAD technology and the ability to visualize in 3D started to get adopted widely. And then you fast forward to the early 2000s when cloud computing and virtual collaboration took over. It
Mhm.
again kind of created this great unlock for teams that used to have to be in a room together and used to have to version things. Like now they could collaborate, much more asynchronously on product development. And now, in the 2020s, we're really in the era of AI assisted new product development. So kind of entering, I guess, the third or fourth wave of technology inflection points for product development. But what's fascinating is with all this increased tooling and automation, there hasn't really been a lot of improvement in product failure rate.
Hmm.
So depending on the literature you're looking at, it's accepted about 40% of new products fail or underperform when they hit the market. And that hasn't really changed for decades, even though
Yeah.
there's been this kind of constant drumbeat of innovation. So this is where we see tremendous opportunity with AI to really crack the code on bringing all this fragmented information together to improve that for businesses. And our team just published their research on you know, we started focusing on footwear as our first market opportunity. And if you look at the classic development cycle for like a performance shoe, it's 18 to 24 months. And
Wow.
and that's accepted. And so, you know, the article that just came out in Research Technology Management showed this very exciting potential for AI to accelerate that front end of product development, think creation to prototyping, effectively replacing months of back and forth between teams with instantaneous results. We can immediately evaluate a concept or immediately serve up market insights rather than doing user research, surveys, customer focus groups, and things like that. So there's potential for cutting that development time in half
Hmm.
conservatively.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting. Like maybe with the rise of like user personalization and customization and these kind of like visual configurators, do you see that companies are increasingly like selling a product like pre-production or like maybe putting out those concepts like pieces of renders or information to maybe gauge the consumer's like appetite for that design or that style and then maybe iterating? I feel like I've seen that myself in products that I followed where it maybe was announced with one particular style, but by the time you actually receive the product, it seems like it's gone through this kind of like change, and maybe that's part of that feedback cycle.
Yeah, I know. I think that's really a path that a lot of companies are taking right now, which is, do the pre-order, do the test of this, this model to see what market appetite is there. And when you think about the innovation in e-commerce and the ability to access direct to consumer, or, place products in Instagram or Facebook, other channels, the um, you know, the time to do that discovery work is really short. And then I think the advantages, you avoid um, creating a lot of product that then sits unsold or has to be deeply discounted or ends up in a landfill somewhere. And um, you know, I think that's where this disconnect between these really long development cycles and this very nimble kind of customer touch point is getting interesting. You see, sort of fast fashion certainly has its
Mhm.
challenges, but that area, whether it's the Sheins or the Zars of the world, they've really reinvented the way they've developed their customer listening and then supply chain and manufacturing cycles to really shrink things down. And I think these companies who have more, let's call them traditional product development cycles, will miss the opportunity to hit some of
Mhm.
these quickly changing consumer trends because they've got a future cast so far ahead. Whereas if they can rethink their approach, they'll stand a chance of being much more nimble and competitive, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And the other opportunity too is if even if you keep that rate of 40%, like you're spending half as much time. So you're not putting as many resources into figuring out like, is this the successful, product that we hope it's going to be? And it's almost like with startups, you want to fail fast. So in some regards, it's a similar thing for your product, right? Like the more products you can get out over a period of time, maybe the more likely you are to hit that big winner that you're looking for, but ideally you're reducing that failure rate at the same time because you're also getting the feedback and identifying more what the customer is interested in than if it's just your internal team that's kind of figuring it out and then putting it out to the world. I know in my space where I do a lot of AR VR stuff, we've seen, I've got a whole wall of them behind me, but like we've seen a lot of like failures and successes, and a company that's usually known for all their successes is Apple. And recently, their Vision Pro, which launched last year, hasn't quite had that consumer success that I think they were going for. So it is interesting to see that big companies, small companies, all run into this kind of issue. And, in Apple's case, I think they kind of try to play the cards to their chest without getting the feedback from the community that might have helped convert that product into something that would have, initially done well. I'm still bullish long term. I think
Mhm.
they're in the right, direction. But things like form factor and weight and battery life are plaguing that particular industry that I'm familiar with on the product development cycle. So it's exciting to see tools like yours that are helping companies to maybe better position themselves for that launch. I'm
Yeah.
curious, and I know we talked about this offline in the past, but like, how do you see AI tools like like the Amazon summary, for example, of these like all the meta reviews that can be created? How do you see that kind of playing into the design feedback?
Yeah, it's I I think there are a couple different paths around that. One is um, I believe that there's a little less consumer interest in the and less trust around Amazon and other very large retailers, in
Mhm.
part because there, been all these efforts to have fake reviews and paid reviews and bots and things like that. And so, where I think maybe the consumer gold is sitting right now is in more of the, I'll call it like the micro influencer content. So if you're making something up here, rock climbing enthusiast, like there's someone or a couple of people who like speak very deeply to that community, and they tend to share their information in personal blog posts or Reddits or YouTube discussions. So and I think that's hard for consumers and certainly hard for businesses to mine and really understand where is that content, what are they saying, and so I think there's a really interesting opportunity to sort of find more signal in the noise, the the democratization of being able to leave product reviews has certainly created a wealth of information, but it's also created a wealth of misinformation
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
inadequate information about products. And I think that's where the AI is so powerful, is this ability to pattern around lots of different fragmented data. And we developed a latent insight model for our customer insights that's basically the brain trust of 80 product and design experts, saying when customers say this is actually what they're trying to say.
Mhm.
So that's where I think there's a lot of power in AI models to help um, you know teams better understand and consumers better understand, like, what's the meaningful information out there about this product.
Yeah, I like that idea of filtering out the noise because it's interesting. In the past, I feel like from a consumer standpoint, it was maybe a little easier to spot those fake reviews, right? There might be like broken English or kind of like repetitive, comments or things that are maybe talking about the wrong product. And I think as a informed consumer, is a little easier back then. It's almost an arms race, right? So you get the AI bots now that are maybe writing really good, grammatically correct reviews that are not based on reality but maybe based on someone's budget or marketing campaign that's a little bit shady. And I love how you guys are kind of countering that with going more to authentic sources and folks that are really like, I don't know, like the YouTubers out there, right, that are talking direct to the customer about the feedback. And so yeah, it's cool that you can envision this kind of army of bots that are listening and collecting and aggregating and filtering that data on your behalf, especially as a product designer. And then you can kind of get those important highlights and maybe even link back right to those direct snippets of, hey, on this particular review, this is the feedback that what you were getting, or there were a lot of comments that were reiterating that person's point of view that, oh yeah, this thing is it's too heavy or it's too expensive, etc.
Yeah, that, I mean, you hit on a really important point there, Mike, which is, I think, one of the hesitations people have around AI is that all of us who've, even been casual users for our own purposes have seen, whether it's a hallucination and a creation of an image or just incorrect information being served up by some of the open models. So being able to have more transparency and explainability about things that our models are suggesting for customers is really key to create that trust and grounding of, why is this model suggesting this. It's not enough to say, this is, hey Mike, this is what consumers are saying about this. You still have to do the human analysis to say, okay, well, what do I do with that information set?
Mhm.
We really want to be able to say, hey Mike, here's what folks are talking about, and here's how it could impact your design, and here are the things that we see as really high value that you should focus on. If there are 10 things you could address, here are the two that are going to help you grab some white space opportunity against competitors, or really set your product apart, or address like meaningful dissatisfaction for your customers about this product that's out there now. That's very much in the space of you're iterating on a product that already exists, but we also can help you identify where are the areas of market opportunity if you
Mhm.
want to develop something new in the market and try to gain ground against other competitors that might be out there.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And yeah, there's always that kind of like spectrum, of, do you want it fast or cheap or quality, right? Like there's like, I think there's like three, usually you refer to in a triangle, but there's probably way more, right? There's probably dozens of different compromises and, different attributes that you may want to go for, right? Are you trying to keep the price down or you're trying to keep the quality up, et cetera? And so, yeah, being able to kind of like read the market and understand like where the consumer's head is at and what they're looking for along all those multiple variables is really interesting. Well, I
Yeah,
wanted to,
absolutely.
shift focus a little bit just to talk about the gap that I perceive anyway, and I'm curious if you see the same in the kind of the design in 3D related 3D design teams internally, and then the 3D that's being used for marketing collateral, right? So creating imagery, renders, video, AR models, configurators, etc. I've perceived that a lot of times teams, especially at a large company, have separate silos. And so folks that are designing the product, they're using CAD tools. They're maybe not thinking about the realism on the material side. They're more thinking about the performance and maybe, running simulation on that. And then you get this little gap, and then the marketing team who would want to basically present the product and replace their photography process. That's a common theme. Have you seen that as well? And how do we close that gap if it exists?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I think you know, the CAD space is really focused more on the utility and manufacturability of products, so that tend to see focus around that versus the um, consumer dimension. And that's why we're so excited with our work that we've been doing with PTC, which is really to take this world of consumer insights and pull it through into the 3D and CAD space, so that as you make those iterative changes in your CAD um, versions, you can still get that test of what consumers want. I would love to get to a space of like really accurate visualization of materials. The material space is someplace
Mhm,
that we are really interested in developing. What I also think is that the marketing has become so much more quantitative, over the past decade plus, and there's a rich amount of information that marketing teams really understand about how consumers interact with information that they're providing. And so I would love to see, both the image space become more realistic and usable, and but also more interaction and intersection
mhm,
between the manufacturability and creation of the product, and the marketing and understanding of those consumer data points. I I think there's a great chance to bring more science to this art space of
mhm.
a lot of
Yeah.
product creation, while still keeping the very human creativity element intact. So I just think this is a really interesting kind of multifaceted problem space and opportunity.
Yeah, that's cool. I like how it kind of helps close the back part of the loop, right? I think like work we've been doing, with Chronos and Super DNA and others that are trying to take that CAD, convert it into imagery, like that's starting to come together and get solved. And, the material libraries, I think those pieces kind of help do that. But I think what I'm hearing from you is it's also the back part of that where you've got the insights from the consumer land and maybe how people are interacting with a configurator or a 3D model and visualizing it, maybe even internally before it goes to the customer. But having that rapid iteration and feedback can then go back into the design. And ideally, your tools are maybe even pulling out some, bits of technical information that can go right back into that kind of technical CAD system. So you're, essentially creating a whole, virtuous cycle, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Excellent. All right. So, one other thing kind of on that trend is the consumer customization, right? Is that something that you see the technology enables as well, where we live in a world where there's not one product, there's like your product, and each user kind of gets to have a say in how it gets fabricated and designed like for them?
The innovator part of me is all in on customization and being able to sort of choose your own adventure as a consumer, to create a product, do your own color assortment, do your own kind of custom, just think of like a performance bike, right? Your ability to just like tune everything in a 3D model, and then it gets shipped to you. The operator side of me gets a little bit of hyper
Gets anxiety from that, right? That's a lot of
stress
options
about
to
like
configure. Yeah.
exactly sort of all the I mean, when you're thinking operations, like permutations are sort of like the efficiency killer, right? So
Mhm.
I think the opportunity here is really how do you tailor the customization to a place where it doesn't create complete inefficiency in the supply chain and build side, but still gives you the benefit of consumers really being able to develop something that's bespoke. One of the challenges that I've seen with some of those true customized products that are out there is that they're just at a price point right now that's not accessible for
Mhm.
most consumers. We know that'll change as you think about just the journey the 3D printing's been on.
Sure, yeah.
This will become something that's more easy to replicate and more able to tune to individual consumer needs. But that's one that I have sort of a mixed feelings about, just based on my own
That's fair.
personal kind of journey.
Yeah, no, I remember looking into some of the, products like a Herman Miller chair that come in, different casters, different wheelbases, different armrests, different backrests. Like once you start looking at all the permutations, when we were thinking, in the past about generating imagery against those permutations, it gets to be, mind-bogglingly huge. It's like billions or, whatever crazy numbers, right? It's like we're not going to be able to make imagery for all of that. However, if we start using 3D, we can potentially address that issue where you've got, 10 sets of 10, and that's fine because you can make those models and it's a reasonable number. You make like 100 different things, but then the consumer has, a lot more variations available to them. So yeah, I think, that's going to be a trend that we'll continue to see and follow as the, like you said, 3D printing. I thought it was interesting. We did, I should plug this. We did a webinar recently, and we'll put a link in the description to that. But one of the other, panelists was talking about how they're doing custom shoe soles, right? And so I think that's another interesting space where you can combine technologies that, myself, my audience are interested in, like 3D scanning. How do you 3D scan your foot, not just for, placing a 3D model on there and kind of seeing what it looks like, but actually for feeding back that information into getting the right size and potentially even a custom insert. I thought that was a, awesome use case.
I totally agree. Makes complete sense.
Great. All right. Well, I'd love to just talk a little bit more about AI, like the state of AI, and then kind of the future of what you see as being, coming up next. So, from an AI perspective, like where did you guys first get started with it? Oh, sorry. I think we had a little pause there.
Yep.
We back now? All right, I'll trim that
Perfect.
out.
Okay.
But all right, so I'll just reiterate. So just to bring the topic back to kind of AI and where you see AI today and kind of where it's going over the next, 5, 10 years. What are the capabilities that you're most excited about that have happened, let's say recently?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about the opportunity to enhance generative design. Personally, I just the when you think about where Midjourney or something like that was 2 years ago, where you get like six fingers on a hand or something like
Yeah.
now you've really got these very very powerful tools. But what's interesting is the design tool's not enough. Not enough if you're talking physical products.
Mhm.
And so for me, what I'm fascinated by is this opportunity to take the very powerful capabilities of generative design tools and create the real world constraints that these designs have to live within. Whether that's manufacturability or cost, or just thinking about fitting your 3D foot into a 3D shoe, like
Mm.
all of those things have a lot of complication in and having a beautiful design doesn't doesn't kind of get you all the way there in terms of something that will actually like be workable from
Right.
a creation standpoint. So I love that the Gen AI, design tools have accelerated to the point where you can really make very vivid, very realistic designs. I'm looking for that next level where the manufacturability and the creation of that beautiful design, that designer can really realize their vision and have it be something that can be, you know, loved by consumers, and so I think this is going to be a space where there's going to be some failed experimentation right now, where
Mhm.
people are going to
Yeah.
over rely on the design element itself and under appreciate the consumer need wrapper that has to go around that design. And you know, I think a year from now, if you and I are, having a revival of this conversation, we'll see a really different space, because companies that are using AI, for their new product development, are seeing revenue lift. Our team did some research that was published in Sloan Management Review that showed different use cases of different companies that are really seeing tremendous lift in both their internal tool use capability, but also in generating revenue. And you've got, I think AI has really shifted from something that companies were a little bit standoffish about and afraid of, to now, how do we how do we augment the teams that we have and what we can do as a business
Mhm.
with some of these very powerful tools.
Yeah. No, that's interesting, and I think that's a journey that we're all going through, right? Like, AI first seemed like magic, and you see a lot of, like, beautiful imagery, and then you realize, like, "Oh, there's a disconnect, maybe the scale is wrong, or there's just unrealistic things that are happening there." And so being able to tie that back into your tools to maybe take out some of the work that's not the creative, interesting part, right? It's more the mechanical, like, stuff that's like computers have been good at doing for us for a while, right? Like calculating physics or simulating things. Now, if AI can be kind of brought in the same fold where you can use it to kind of take out some of the monotony of like building out technical specs, but then you still have that creative process. And so that kind of leads me to my next question is like, where do you see that like the human fits in for this, right? Like generally, when I talk to folks in the space, it's don't worry, we're not going to replace anybody. But yet there's also a lot of power in these tools. So I think, the average folks or especially people in the artist community have found that like, hey, there's like some danger here. But at the same time, there's maybe new opportunity. Like, how do you see that evolving?
Yeah, I mean, I I won't claim this as my original opinion. I heard a professor of economics last month give a talk on um, where the impact to jobs will be from AI, and I think that his approach to the research was that there are things that are fundamentally human, creativity and empathy being among the highest skills that AI will not be able to replace. And so I think for creatives and makers, that is a really good thing, because
Mhm,
that means that AI will be augmenting the work that you're doing. And what I think is really fascinating is the potential for real reinvention on how work gets done. So I geek out a bit on the future of work
mhm.
potential of a
Nice.
lot of what is being developed and used right now. And if we sort of lean into those uniquely human facets of the capabilities that we all bring to the table, and say like, what how can we use AI to point out um, the path for us, and then we can apply our reasoning and judgment and creativity to what's the best way to take that advice forward. That's where I think it's going to get interesting. If you I think where it's very risky is in jobs that have a lot of data processing, because
Mhm.
that's what
Yeah.
AI can do very, very fast. And if it's routine high data type of work, and then that's probably something where AI will rapidly take over the space. But I think in the space you and I love, I think these tools have a lot of power to do some very inventive things.
Yeah. Excellent. This has been a great conversation. I do want to make sure the audience has a chance to kind of follow you and stay in touch. And where can we follow you? What's the best channel? And what's coming to look forward to?
Oh, so appreciate that. This has been amazing conversation. So Anyone who's interested is welcome to reach out to me, Liz at adaiq.com, or check out our website, adaiq.com. We're also very active on LinkedIn, so jump in and engage with our content on LinkedIn. So uh, excited to continue this conversation with anyone out there in the public platform.
All right, awesome. Well, again, thanks so much, and we'll tune in next week.